That's a man's voice speaking to a Taliban soldier. He's at a checkpoint in Afghanistan, and he's absolutely terrified. You can hear his kids crying in the car. He's sure this is the end. So how did he get here? And more importantly, how is he going to get out? His story is just one of three incredible, unbelievable tales of deception we're about to unravel. Three moments in history where the only way out was a perfect, life-saving lie. First up, we're heading back in time to a world filled with paranoia and persecution. Nazi-occupied France. In this world, a simple piece of paper, just a single stamp on an ID card, was literally the difference between life and a one-way ticket to Auschwitz. Okay, now, let's jump forward about 60 years, right into the high-stakes world of international crime. We've got a seriously dangerous syndicate flooding the U.S. with counterfeit cash, drugs, even military-grade weapons. The FBI has to find a way to take them all down, all at once. And that brings us right back to where we started, to those chaotic, desperate days of the U.S. withdrawal from Afghanistan. Hundreds of allies, people who had helped the U.S., were now being hunted by the Taliban. They were trapped. Their only hope? A group of veterans, thousands of miles away. So you've got three totally different moments in time, three situations that seem completely impossible. So what's the connection? Well, it's the audacious, brilliant use of a perfect, life-saving lie. This is the art of deception. To really get the genius of these deceptions, you first have to understand just how impossible the problems were. I mean, each situation was a crisis with no obvious way out, where the odds of survival were pretty much zero. In France, the state's own bureaucracy became a weapon of mass murder. Think about it. If your identity card was stamped with the word Jew, you were a target. You couldn't get a job, you couldn't travel, you couldn't really exist. As one survivor put it, you were as good as dead. After Kabul fell, it was open season on anyone who had worked with American forces. The Taliban were literally sliding night letters under their doors. One of them read, "Your whole family is sentenced to death for betraying the Islamic Emirate." There was no official way out. They were being hunted down one by one. And at the same time, you've got the FBI facing this criminal syndicate with some terrifying ambition. We're not talking about fake cigarettes here. These guys were moving counterfeit $100 bills so good they could fool detection devices. They even offered to sell rocket launchers and silenced submachine guns to undercover agents. So you see the problem, right? In every single case, a normal approach was just doomed to fail. You couldn't fight the Nazis head-on, you couldn't just negotiate with the Taliban, and you couldn't arrest this massive crime ring one person at a time. The only answer was to think the unthinkable. And this is where the real genius comes in. The core of each plan was to create a fake reality, something so convincing, so utterly normal, that it could hide something extraordinary right there in plain sight. In Paris, a secret forgery lab was disguised as a simple art studio. And what's just incredible, for both the FBI sting and the Afghan rescue, the perfect cover was a big, fancy wedding. Just try to imagine the sheer confusion and terror of that. You've escaped the Taliban, you show up at a secret location with a secret code word, and the guy in charge just looks at you and says, "Welcome to the wedding party." But there's no bride, no groom, no music, just 382 other terrified people, all pretending to be wedding guests. You know, an audacious plan is one thing, but to actually pull it off, you need tools. You have to create actual physical objects that can stand up to intense scrutiny, objects that will either save your life or get you killed. And this is where the genius of Adolfo Kaminsky just shines. First, he figured out that simple lactic acid, the stuff in milk, could completely erase the supposedly permanent ink on official documents. Then, he taught himself how to recreate everything, from watermarks to official letterheads. And get this, he forged perfect rubber stamps using scrap metal he found in junk shops. He became a one-man factory, racing against death, churning out hundreds of life-saving documents a week. Now, the FBI's tool was just as convincing, but in a totally different way. They created this gorgeous, professionally designed, super lavish wedding invitation. It promised a fancy ceremony on a luxury yacht off the coast of Atlantic City. It was so believable that one of the criminals actually bought the happy couple a pair of gold Rolex watches as a wedding gift. And then you have the tool for the Afghan rescue, and it was a world away from the others. It was a homemade boarding pass put together by volunteers in the US and then emailed to hundreds of people hiding out in that wedding hall. Someone who saw it said it looked like something with yearbook photos photoshopped on it. It looked completely fake, and yet everything, absolutely everything, depended on it.
But here's the thing. A brilliant plan and a perfect tool, they're both completely meaningless without this final step. Every single one of these deceptions boils down to one single terrifying moment of truth. A moment where there's no turning back, where the lie either holds or it all comes crashing down. So you have these three scenes, separated by decades, but they're all happening on the exact same razor's edge. A Jewish child hands her fake ID to a Nazi officer. An international arms dealer dressed to the nines steps into a limousine driven by an FBI agent in a tuxedo. An Afghan family hands their homemade boarding pass to a suspicious Taliban guard. I mean, can you even imagine that pressure? The forger knows that if he made one tiny mistake, a person dies. The undercover agents know that if their cover gets blown, this whole crime ring just disappears. And the veterans in Kansas City can only stare at a flight tracker app on their phones, praying that a piece of paper they made on a computer is enough to fool the Taliban. Would it actually work? Incredibly, in all three cases, it did. The lie held. And the results, the dividend paid out by these incredible acts of deception, were, well, they were nothing short of breathtaking. The payoff here was just staggering. Let's look at the numbers. Adolfo Kaminsky and the resistance networks he supplied saved an estimated 14,000 men, women, and children from the death camps. Operation Royal Charm, that fake wedding, it led to the arrest of 87 members of a global crime syndicate. And Operation Bella, the other fake wedding, rescued 383 Afghan allies and their families, getting them on a charter plane to freedom.
In the end, what drives someone to take on that kind of risk? It's definitely not for glory. Adolfo Kaminsky kept his medals tucked away in a suitcase under his bed. For him, it was simple. He just said, I did what I had to when I had to. Which leaves us with a final thought. In the face of impossible evil or just overwhelming desperation, maybe the most powerful weapon we have isn't a weapon at all. Maybe it's our own imagination.